Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Borderline Podcast with me, your host, Andrew Willox. Guys, back by popular demand, I'm joined by the brilliant Milque Colin, who's kindly offered to come back to the podcast after being on our debut episode back in March. I'm so happy to have you back on, Milque. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good.
Good. And that's all we're going to start with tonight, because the goal of this episode is to make each other feel just a little bit better about ourselves today, because for our own reasons, we've felt a little bit down. I think, without trying to swear straight away on the podcast.
We can make it past 5 minutes without swearing.
Yeah,
come on, Andrew, we've got this.
we'll do our best. But so obviously, you know, it's been a pretty turbulent year for the both of us, and that's why we're back sat here today, because it's always good to have these proactive chats, to normalize them, to destigmatize them, and to give hope to other people that having a little chat like this can totally change the way that you feel, maybe about yourself and about others. So I think it's incredibly important that we're doing this, not just for ourselves, but for everybody else as well. So thank you again, once more, Milque, for coming on. And sorry.
No, you're okay. On you go.
And you know, something that you wanted to talk about specifically, we may as well just get straight into it straight away, is self-sabotage and the dangers. Because when you messaged me that a couple of weeks back, I thought, yeah, like that I completely relate to that with how I've been feeling what seems to be this entire year so far. This has not all been that bad, but the way that the mind works. Yeah. So could you just talk to us what you define as self-sabotage for a start, I guess?
So I'm going to reiterate just before we start that I am not an expert by any means. I am purely talking from my own personal life experience and things that I have found that I have faced and that I have sometimes managed to get over, I've sometimes managed to make things a little bit easier for myself, and some I haven't. Some I still struggle with. Some are a constant daily battle. So this is not expert advice. This is purely something that's happened to me that people out there might be relate to, and that you can relate to, Andrew. Might help, might not, but it's there. I think it has been a really tough year for a lot of people. Majority of people I speak to have either some tragedy going on, some bad news. You know, we're all feeling overwhelmed. There seems to be this negative sort of presence with everybody I speak to. I'm sure there's good out there, but it just feels like I just want to take a giant sage stick and just cleanse the world or start a reboot button, because everybody seems to be going through a hard time at the moment. And I'm not talking about difficulties. I'm talking about when things are going good, when your anxiety is alleviated a little bit, when your depression is kind of lifted, and you're like, do you know what? Depression isn't going to rule my life. I am going to get on my feet. I can start work. I can start joining clubs. I can start doing activities. I'm feeling a lot better. I've not had anxiety for a while. Gosh, look at me. Look, oh, this is life. This little tiny voice inside of you says, this is foreign. Yeah. This isn't where we're normally at. We don't like this. What can we do to ruin this? And it's this tiny little annoying self-destructive voice. It doesn't come from anybody else. When tragedy and that happens, it is difficult to deal with, but it isn't that I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about this little self-sabotaging voice, and we all do it in different ways. Some of us will maybe I'm really just plucking out examples from the air and things that I have done personally, so please, I am not judging anybody if you have done this. This is something I have done personally through my journey of depression and anxiety. You start drinking too much, you act out, you can be quite mean to close people that are next to you without sort of realising, but this voice in your head just gets you to act how you don't want to be. And it isn't, majority of the time, it's not even through a want of doing it, you just find yourself doing it. Myself personally, and this is me getting far too open and far too deep already. I've not sworn, but I'm going really deep now. I find myself overeating. I'll get a massive tub of Ben and Jerry's ice cream and I'll eat the whole thing. Do I feel better? No. Do I know the consequences of it? The acid reflux I'll get with it, the discomfort I'll get with it? Yes. And I still do it. And it isn't, and I could be having a brilliant day and I will somehow talk myself into how I deserve this Ben and Jerry's ice cream. So my self-sabotage is quite often with food, but I've also done it with drink. I've done it with where I've maybe lashed out at people where I've not meant to, especially loved ones. You'll find yourself turning on them loved ones that are there wanting to support you and stuff. And I'm sure there's professional reasons that people, not professional, that's not what I mean. It'll be proven, scientific, researched reasons as to why we do this. And I wish I could tell you that, but I can't. I can only just tell you my own personal experience. But being everything going good and you're feeling really good about yourself and you're almost like, okay, this is how life is going to be. This is going to be the new me. Let me do this. Let me do that. As much as the self-sabotaging, I think as well you've got to allow space for times where you have thought, I am doing so good, and you try to climb a mountain.
Yeah.
And you try to do too much. You try to overstretch your body, and then everything ends up collapsing around you. That I feel cruel calling that self-sabotage, because that's just almost that you're so good and you just want to celebrate it and you want to do the best that you can do, and that is never self-inflicted. That is almost like a different where things all self-implode in themselves. And you I mean, I've seen me take on full-time jobs and had to give them up because I'm just not capable of doing that. I've accepted I have to work and think differently to other people. My anxiety, my depression can only let me do so much. And there's times where I have to stop. But that's been through numerous failed attempts of learning that I have limitations and how to live within them limitations, and almost feel myself getting to that self-destructive point and thinking, no, stop. Just stop. Just take that little voice inside your head that is trying to destroy this and just stop. Just stop. Just take a time out. Just take a break. Like, this good feeling and this good surroundings that you've worked so hard to put yourself in aren't going to go away if you just take a time out. Mm-hmm. As if you just keep piling forward, sometimes that can lead to that self-destruction, and you can get to the point of almost no return, where you've upset too many people or your behaviour's been inappropriate. Been there, done that, unfortunately. I feel like I've talked myself round in a whole bunch of circles. But I think those of you out there that have experienced it will kind of know what I mean. Well, I hope you'll kind of know what you mean. And I hope that me opening up just a little bit of what I do and how I can sabotage a good time, and when the sort of heavy blanket of depression eases off, instead of enjoying it. And there are times where you are able to enjoy it, but it just feels so foreign. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how just that uncomfortableness of feeling good and feeling like things are going right can result in such a negative thing. And it is not premeditated in any means. It is just purely how your body decides to react, which is bizarre. You were saying yourself, Andrew, that you feel that you've gone through things like that recently. Yeah. And like you said, when you messaged me and I said, well, what about talking about this? You said, that's how I'm feeling sort of right now.
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. To go back to the first point that you made, and something that you said that you told me this has to go into the episode, is a point that you made just before you started there, was that you're not an expert. And like I said to you before we started recording, that, and this is an absolutely no disrespect to any of the experts in their respected fields that's came onto the podcast so far, but I find at times that when I'm sat doing a podcast, this is obviously just for me personally, when I sat doing a podcast, I'm there absorbing the information. I'm trying to decipher how to work a question around it, how to hook back into an angle or to go into a trigger question. But when I'm sat in front of people the likes of yourself or Liza or Chloe, Kev, Adam, whoever it's been, there's a lot more realness of relatability to that than, like I say, no disrespect to an expert, but not to an expert, because an expert's advice is often living in the past and how you can feel in the future. It's never really living in the now. And I think what's so proactive about these conversations that they are right now, and yes, we're going to go back into little things of triggers and what might not have helped us, and maybe a bit of misdirection that we put on ourselves at times. But there's certainly what I'm trying to say there is that you are, in a sense, an expert.
Yeah,
in your own
personal experience.
And that's the best.
And there is no textbook for everybody.
No,
I mean, there's a blanket textbook that you could try and lay, but everybody's going to have different triggers, different events, different kinds of depression, there might be a different start-off point, there might have been nothing. I mean, for me, personally, I find that this is going to sound really bizarre. I can't even think. Hopefully you're going to get this, but this sounds really bizarre. Okay, so my depression is easy because I lost my father at a young age. I didn't have the best of childhoods. I then lost my son's dad. So I've got reasons for being depressed. Yeah. But you can have somebody out there who's had an idyllic childhood, who has had 2 very healthy, emotional parents who were supportive, financially secure. They had siblings. They had a great upbringing. Then they went on and they had a successful career and they built a relationship and they get depression. Yeah. And it must be difficult when you can't put a pin on the reason why, and suddenly your brain almost turns against you.
Yeah. Well, that pretty much does highlight me, encapsulates me entirely. So, to flow into that, I've spoken about my childhood pretty much, it wasn't perfect, but it was anything but bad. It was really a nice upbringing that I had. And I can't really focus my depression into one thing apart from the anxiety feelings that I had for so years made me depressed. But this year, trying to manage the depression has been the exhausting part for me. And to go into that self-sabotage, like we spoke about, like from the turn of this year, I've not failed at one thing, apart from, I think maybe one thing was the Edinburgh half marathon that I was meant to do, but I had to pull out of that from injury. So I hardly call that failing.
You did not fail.
Exactly. I hardly call that failing.
Did not fail. That was you.
Exactly.
That was
your body's saying no at that point.
You built that mountain a little bit too high. You did Hydrox.
And then I was just like, let's all guns forward. Let's keep on going on this train because you don't want it to stop. And I think that's probably where my self-sabotaging starts, is that I give myself not unrealistic goals, but Andrew goals. And Andrew goals are always going to be a little bit more unrealistic than the reality that Andrew's living in, because Andrew goes to work Monday to Friday. He has a wife, he has cats, he has a dog, he has all these other things that he wants to do with his time.
So in your Andrew goals, you maybe have like a 48-hour day?
Yeah.
So your day is like double the length of everybody?
Yeah,
so you're like, I have all this time, let me plan all this stuff
That's the optimism that I think gets lost in my mind sometimes, is that I think, you can do that in an hour, in 2 hours, it's fine. But when you don't do them things, my God, there's the sabotaging and the intrusive thoughts coming, because all of a sudden there's a shift. And I'll make a really good point to highlight this at the end of this, is that, so let's just take High Rocks for example. We went and done High Rocks and there was a little bit of injury, so I had to take time off the gym, a load of time to focus on the podcast. But did I? No.
No.
Did I? No, because it doesn't work like that, because I had all this free time in my hand and I'm used to working with anxiety and depression, not powering my emotion, but saying, get it done, because it'll make you feel good. And all of a sudden I had this time to not feel depressed. Yeah. And my God, was it damaging.
And do you know when they call it procrastinating, it's not.
No.
It's a different, like, I can procrastinate for the best of them. Honestly, I can. I'm going to just tell everybody I was 15 minutes late for this episode because I started a 5-minute job, which took an hour. I can procrastinate and just put things off, and my pile at the bottom of the stairs gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the things never make up the stairs. It is not procrastinating. It is literally, you're given all the time in the world to do something that you enjoy, the podcast. Yeah. I'm going to, as a celebrant, I write scripts, and I'm going to use this as an example. And I want everybody to know who I have written, or I'm going to be writing a script to, who may be listening to this. I throw my all into it. But sometimes getting to my all is what takes the time. And I'll speak to a couple, and I love writing a script. And I think, great, I've got 2 weeks. Do I take the 2 weeks? No. And do I think, oh, I'm not working, I'm on holiday, so I've got all the time, so I'm going to sit in front of my laptop and do it? I don't. I have this little voice inside my head that's like, go on, do it. Just sit down, go and do it. You're going to enjoy doing it. With this little voice, you're not as good as what you think you are.
Yeah.
The last couple like the script, but this couple aren't going to like you. I feel that scripts aren't necessarily a good thing, because I love doing them, so they're maybe not a good example. But even if it is something that you get so much enjoyment out of, it's amazing how this intrusive negative thought will stop you from doing it, and you'll basically be disabled by it.
Yes.
It will literally pin you still. I joined Agnostic Scotland at the beginning of the year, and I am now able to conduct legal ceremonies as part of Agnostic Scotland, and training with Agnostic Scotland has been amazing. They've not only just enabled me to be a better celebrant, but they've also enabled me to be a better understanding of who I am and what my limitations are, what I want to put out in the world, the goodness that I want to put out there, and why. But I had my first assignment to do, and I was frozen still on the couch. And I kept thinking, open the laptop, start typing, just do it. I was stuck with this little voice zone going in my head, you're a failure. You think you can do it, you failed before, you're going to fail again. Why even bother? And if anybody out there has experienced this, you're going to understand how loud that voice is. For anybody there who hasn't experienced this, you lucky, lucky souls. I am so envious of you out there who have never experienced this blaring negative thought that goes into your head that will freeze you solid to the spot.
You can't get rid of it.
No, you can't. And you can't even turn the volume down on it. Then when you do get up to go and do something, you've just had this massive battle with your inner voice. By the time you sit up and get to do something, you're exhausted.
Yeah. I mean, wow. So that exactly highlights my point into why the real talks are so much more relatable and there's so much more value in them, because that is a nutshell of what has been going on in my head, certainly for the last couple of months. So much so, my anxiety page, I don't think you'll know this, the anxiety page that I started on Instagram, Andrew's Anxiety Adventures, actually on hiatus just now. I've had to take some time off of that because the negative self-talk around posting on there, and I'm always open, always open about talking about mental health, and I struggle sometimes to understand maybe the boundaries of that sometimes. So maybe I'll go and post something, and you put your heart and soul into it, and it's not a discredit to anybody else. It doesn't get likes, and then you think, oh well, it's not got noticed, so you just take it off, and then maybe it's only been on for a day or so, you take it back off, and then the next time you're going to do that voice is already a step ahead of you to say, well, what's the point in doing it? Nobody likes it. And that, like I spoke to you before, that validation feeling. Unless you don't get that validation to go, no, it is good. That to me is the only thing that can silence that voice a little bit sometimes, because my voice is never strong enough to do that, because like you say, it is so debilitating. Like I found myself waking up in the morning, you come down for a cigarette, and I've not even thought about what I'm doing in my day yet, and that intrusive thought is already trying to pluck away somehow into my mindset already to go, good, you can't be bothered. I'm like, I'm not even thinking of doing anything yet. It's tough, but then
it wakes up before you.
It does.
It goes to sleep after you.
Yeah.
And it's always there.
Yeah, constant message, constant barrage in a thought sometimes, and like you say, that becomes exhausting. And with that, I get quite not snappy. I wouldn't say. Well, yeah, yes,
Irritable.
Yeah, a lot more irritable, and that's
you're almost raw.
Yeah,
because like
exactly.
Okay, our partners are not going to know the battle we've just had getting out of bed. Our friends aren't going to know the battle we've just had. Our tutors or the audience are not going to understand the battle we've just had. But we're exhausted, we're raw, we're irritable, just because we've took all of our energy just to get up and do something that we love and we enjoy.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's wrong with you? It was like, well, I just had to have a battle with the inner Milky to tell the inner Milky that the actual Milky right here is good and can do something and is trying to put good out there in the world. And it doesn't matter how often you do it, that battle never gets any easier. And then some days you will go and do something and it feels like a breeze and everything goes to plan and everything goes well. And that's the moments that we hope for.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they're not as regular as the battles.
That's the problem, is that I think you use so much energy sometimes with those battles that even when you start to feel good, that you can't sustain it, because you're either picking up on lost time, so to speak, from feeling shitty. First swear word goes into the coin jar of the day.
It was you, not
me. Use all that time and energy kind of focus on getting yourself busy and keeping those emotions in check, because I think keeping the emotions in check and keeping others safe from a way that you're feeling sometimes is the most harrowing, the most exhausting part, possibly. Yeah.
And I think when I was younger, definitely, I always felt if I could fix somebody else, I would fix myself.
Yeah.
And that is almost like a self-sabotaging as well, because we put other people before us and we keep putting them before us so that by the time somebody turns around and goes, "Are you okay?" We're a puddle. We're an absolute mess. But we've spent all that energy and time enabling others, making others feel good in the hope that it will leak back onto us. Yeah. And I am definitely guilty of that. I will put my friends' needs before me. I'll put my partner's needs before me. I'll put my son's needs before me. I'll put my job before me.
People with depression are the biggest people pleasers in the world.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. We are. Like, we should get certificates for how much people pleasers we are. And I think it comes from a good place. It comes from knowing how bad you can feel and knowing what it's like to be on the dark side of life and knowing what it's like to not want to get out of bed. So we don't want others to suffer through that alone, or we don't want others to feel as rubbish as we do. So we do try and make other people better, and it is so much easier to put other people before you. If I didn't turn around and I was like, okay, Milky, you've got to go and work on you and you've got to do yourself, or here's 5 people, total strangers that you don't know, that you can make them feel better, I will always go for the strangers.
Well, that's it, because even if you're going to focus on yourself, that means you're going to have to confront that voice, and whether you consciously think that or not, that's going to be embedded in there at some point. It's
and you're listening to me and you're going, how can helping others be sabotage, Milky? How can trying to make the world a better place for somebody else be sabotage? It is when it comes at the cost of your own mental health, or even your own well-being.
And that's it. That's a really good point. There's the misconception with that if you're helping others constantly, well, you've got to help. You've got to feel amazing yourself. It's just, no. It's, although it'll stimulate that serotonin, and it'll stimulate the dopamine, that that chemicals that we're going to feel good overall. But again, that's tiring. And that we come to the end of the day, something that I'm maybe quite guilty of, I guess, is that just say I've done a really good podcast with somebody, or I've spoken to somebody, because that's quite a common thing on the anxiety page, is that people will message and we'll just interact and we'll just message back and forward about their anxiety. And a problem that I seem to get with self, maybe it's that negative self-talk coming in once more, is that when you don't feel good about doing that, you start questioning your own validity of, why am I not what's wrong with me not to feel good? Why am I not feeling that emotion? And again, it centers back to the sabotaging, that unless you really are actively working on yourself, you're just kind of suppressing that inner voice that can be so dangerous. And
if you need validated, call me. I will validate you. And it is often just enough to have a mentor, a tutor, a friend, a family, for me, couples, or, if I'm doing a funeral for somebody, and if they thank me for it, and just thanking me for it can be enough to, I would love to say to keep me going and just get back on another script. But by you validating me, it gives me enough to keep fighting that inner voice. Not enough to take away that inner voice, because the next job I have to do, or the next good thing I have to do out there, like I said, the voice is much stronger than we are. But that validation, that thank you, that well done, that, oh, you're being so kind, is enough. And if anybody out there needs it, contact me, I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Because a kind word from a stranger, a kind word from a soul can be enough to think that was worth that fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like one sentence. I think that's another massive misconception when we talk about talking about our mental health, is that people think that you need to possibly discuss it at length and overall. But something that I always realize, and I always notice in myself, that when I'm talking, even to likes of yourself, that's definitely happened during our podcast, one little sentence can reframe the way that the mind works, and they think, if that just makes sense to me, then could that give me a little bit of hope? Because one thing that I'm certainly focusing now is the depression side. It isn't sadness, it's hopelessness.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Yeah, when I was on before, I was about giving people hope.
Yeah,
it is.
It really
you just
is.
feel so hopeless. You feel like whatever you do, you're going to feel rubbish.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, it's going to fail. Whatever you do. So it's you have no hope. And it's getting that hope back, but sustaining it. And sustaining it, unfortunately, is a battle. It's a daily battle. There's some days where it's not there, and they're great days. But majority of the time, it's a daily battle. And I'm positive I said this last time, because it's something I heard and it stuck with me. And this was said by an expert. And the first thing I did when I heard it was like, that's not true. That said that anxiety and negative thinking are imagination. That's not true. How, like, you be in my head, and anxiety and negative thinking can be completely altered and spun on its head by positive thinking. Now, this expert's right, much to my annoyance. And I hope that you were all with me in that first initial reaction of, you're talking complete rubbish, Milky. That is not true. You wait till you have an anxiety attack and you tell me that that's just imagination. But it's true. That negativity can be turned on its head and be changed into positivity. And that is the only difference between having that I can't do it to I can do it. Mm-hmm. Or let me try. And it is just I can't. Okay, just change the word to I can.
Yeah.
And I will. Just change it. It is unfortunately that easy. Yeah. But it's not. But no. It is.
That's it. It's a double-ended sword, isn't it? It's I had a really rough day last Monday, and my mum came across, and it's true. Like we're just sat talking for a while, and Sass was there as well. And it's just like, well, why don't we do this? And then what you start to imagine is that even when you're used to the conversation that much, you're answering ahead of the questions. And then we found ourselves, oh yes, because that means the motivation. That means you need the motivation first. And it's so hard and taxing, because you realise at times that it really can feel like there's no way out whatsoever when you really get into a depressive mind. Sorry, it's just a bee. I thought it was a wasp in front of me, but it's just a little bee.
And as well, not only that, when you all sit down and you discuss something that you're going to do as well, you're like, I'm going to let everybody down. Yeah. What if you don't? What if you succeed? What if you have a great time? Oh my God. Sorry. I really need, I'm just so determined to stop saying, oh my God. And the more and more I try to stop saying it, and you go, oh my gosh, what if I actually do this and enjoy it?
Yeah. But, I mean, again, focus on High Rocks for the day again, just to widen back into that, because we were talking about it earlier.
Andrew, did you do High Rocks by any chance?
I did.
I don't think you've told us enough.
I've not yet.
No.
Well, I'll tell you, I've got a special episode dedicated right to it. We'll play it directly after this.
I feel like you need to sandwich it into every episode. Okay, just for people out there that don't know, Andrew did High Rocks. He did amazing.
2 concepts about somebody that's done that and a podcast. That's the only 2 things we're going to mention every single time. If you're not listening, but you listen to the podcast, so yeah.
And anybody that's still with me that thinks running is pointless, we're still waiting for you to come and defend your argument.
I ain't running in that. That's dangerous out there today. That big bright thing in the sky.
We're still waiting for somebody to come and defend running, that there is a point to it.
I'll tell you something hilarious. This is
Sorry, I took you away from your Hydrox talk.
Oh, it's okay. I've lost my chain. No, that's fine. I remember where I am now. So
you succeeded.
So we done that, yeah. And the most, I'll be honest, the thing that I enjoyed about that day the most is that I didn't have any feelings of anxiety. That was the win for me. Now, it didn't matter that you went and done this 8 kilometers plus different series of events in between, and that was superficially hard. But getting up and going onto the train and stopping off and having a bit of food and then enjoying the atmosphere and enjoying the environment and actually just being able to enjoy myself, that was a very, very, very new feeling for me. I mean, I've got to be honest, without alcohol, that's a feeling that I've not felt for years, because usually I would have to have that little bit of alcohol in me anyway just to lower that inhibition, to take the nerves away just for walking into a busy arena or something like that. And going into the foreign feelings, but it felt very, very, very good. But after that, nothing felt as good as that, because I had the feelings of depression.
Yeah.
I had the feelings of not so much anxiety, but anxiety is always thereabouts, isn't it? It's that weird little that thing that can manifest itself at any point.
So you did a huge thing, a massive thing, with strangers in a city. You trained for it, and it was huge, and you did it all without anxiety.
Yeah.
And now you're looking back on that, and you feel like it was a million years ago, and you feel like it was a different Andrew.
Yeah, that is part of the issue, and that's kind of rebounded on into other aspects of my life with the podcast, with the anxiety page. Like I say, speaking of these feelings of validation, a fact about the podcast that it dawned on me only the other day is that I don't know why, because I'm wanting to try and get the website and that sorted out, which again was supposed to be last week, but here we are. we'll give it another week. I
think there should be like a little asterisk that goes onto the end of any timing given to you by somebody who suffers from anxiety or depression. There's an asterisk. This time frame was decided by a depressive, anxious person. Please allow massive flexibility. Or what we can also do is we can be like way ahead of time for absolutely no reason at all whatsoever. Consistency.
Yeah, well, consistency. No,
consistency
that's a hard one.
does not exist for somebody who suffers from depression and anxiety. And back to these experts, who I still value, but back to these experts. And this one I still don't agree with. So I suddenly didn't realise that it is positive thinking. But these experts that say you need routine. Yeah. You're asking us to pluck consistency out of thin air. Yeah. How can somebody with anxiety and depression or any mental health issue stick to
a
routine?
It is.
Come on.
I mean, that's weird. That's funny that you say that, because see, if I think of myself back in like maybe 2018 or 2019, I maybe wasn't as depressed, but my days, I had my day down to a T.
Did you have a routine? Oh, Andrew, you're now just showing off. Oh, look at me with my little routine.
Honestly, it was ridiculous how thorough I was with my day.
Okay, talk me through this routine that you had, and I'm gonna just be the devil's. Honestly, I'm so determined to stop bringing in these idols and stuff. Right, you talk me through this routine, and I am going to discuss where anxiety and depression would have reared its ugly head.
Right. Okay. So back then, I was absolutely committed to the gym. I was drinking a lot of weekends, but for me it was fine to do all this hard work and all this really good.
So would you even have classed the drinking as part of a routine?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
now
yeah,
you see.
yeah,
So
definitely.
we even allowed time for self-sabotage.
Yeah, so...
Okay. I really feel like I'm being quite cruel here.
No.
But
You
anybody...
pick my brain apart.
Pick your routine apart. So we would get up in the morning. Did you get up the same time every morning?
Pretty much, yeah. So I
That
was dialed in.
is... Right, massive respect for that.
Dialed in, and I would always have... Right, yeah, this is...
Anybody with depression or anxiety that gets up at the same time every morning, please tell me your secret, or please share with me your medication.
5 o'clock every morning, I was ready to go.
No.
Ready to go. Maybe 5 or 6 o'clock, yeah, every single day. And
that was nighttime.
Joke. I mean, I still get up at like 4 o'clock now.
What? For your job?
No, it's sunlight, unfortunately, this time of year.
Okay. I am just going to bottle some of Andrew's wake upness.
That's because it's strong caffeine in this house. But
right, so you wake up.
Yeah, so I wake up in the morning, and then I'd always have a really thick oat shake, plenty of protein, there'd be some olive oil in there, there'd be some just really goodness.
Every expert in the land here is cheering you on.
Thank you.
Every depression person thinking, wait for it.
And then I'd get up, I'd then go to work, I would eat my meals exactly. Every single meal was just about exactly the same as well. That's what's
okay. Salad, protein.
Yeah. Well, yeah, pretty much for lunch every day was either an egg salad or a tuna salad. No deviation on there throughout the week until we got to the weekends, of course. And at night time, it tended to be chicken and rice, chicken and beef with rice, some fish salad or another salad. There would be no deviation from what I was eating whatsoever. Full of workouts every single day, meditation, very good, healthy kind of lifestyle. And then we'd get to the weekend. Now, what's funny about that is that I wouldn't go out on a Friday. A load of people are regretting now.
Sorry, I'm just going to take you back. What time did you go to sleep?
Probably around about 10 o'clock.
And so you woke up at the same time every day. You went to bed at the same day, which is you ate good, healthy meals, which really is what every single expert
would be away going running.
They would on paper.
Yeah, this is what's wrong with that.
You have got a brilliant life.
Yeah,
you're keeping fit. You're eating healthy. You're getting up at the right time.
I would have no reason to be depressed.
Yeah,
I'd absolutely no. Like I was fully what we would say, and dare me say the words. I was fully in control of my life, or what it felt like. Sorry.
Okay, everybody, please. On the count of 3, let's just tell Andrew off for showing off.
That's it. This was 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, though I guess. And
by the experts, that's you knocked it on the head. That's you sus. That's you perfect. But the only trouble that comes in is if there is a little spanner thrown in there. If you have to deviate from that routine, your mental health is going to crumble.
Massively. I mean, if I didn't get a workout in, I would be an irritable bitch, for want of a better word. If I didn't get quite as enough sleep as I usually would do, the routine was
you were in control, but you were unable to accommodate any deviation.
I think to go on a point that you said there that I think would be that highlights us all is that from an expert point of view, from people saying, if you go out and you do exercise and if you go and eat this and if you go and do this, you're not going to feel shit. Yeah, no, you're still going to feel shit, because like you talk about the self-sabotage. Come to the weekend. Now, I would never go out with friends drinking on a Friday because I had the gym on a Friday and they went out to drink on Fridays. And I just didn't go out on Saturdays, so I missed my opportunity with that. And I even remember thinking, "Oh, Ken, you're so good at your life just now. You're picking the gym rather than going out drinking alcohol." But then what would happen on a Saturday is around about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the beers would start opening up, and that would continue until around about 9 o'clock on Sunday night. Yes, it would be an 8-hour period with sleep in between and a little bit of morning on the Sunday. But other than that, so I'd wasted everything. Really, realistically, I'd wasted everything that I'd done in that week, because you're fine-tuning your calories, you're fine-tuning your macronutrients that you're eating. That accounts for very little by Sunday night. The body and the diet doesn't work Monday to Friday. It works Monday to Sunday to Sunday, Monday to Monday, whatever day you want to look at it. So you're entirely right. That was self-sabotaging my own success by hindering it and not even being honest with myself enough back then to see that. And it's taken great lengths for me. I mean,
This is where the experts get confusing as well, where they'll say, if you can have 5 good days, you're allowed 2 days where you can deviate from it all. But it's that deviation and that disruption that causes all the self-sabotage. And for some people, having a routine 7 days a week will be great, and that will be their solution.
Yeah.
And, if that works for you, go for it. But majority of people, it's unrealistic. It's unsustainable. And getting consistency in a life of depression and anxiety, for me personally, I find it unobtainable.
Yeah, I mean, that's it entirely. Is that, pardon me, for 7 days, if I was to look at myself now I know I can go to the gym 7 days in a week, and I know that I can push myself hard to go make all the food for that. Now that would take a lot more energy to do for me, is just say prep work for making this good week. It would be a lot more easier for me to do that back then. There'd be a lot more motivation for that. However, I know now that intrusive voice, like we talk about, is so much stronger than you're just going to feel good at the end of the week, because I could put all that, and this is where it could become damaging. I could put all that effort in. I could spend a day planning my week ahead. But by the Sunday night, if I still feel shit, was it really worth it? Or again, is that intrusive thought going to come back and say, well, what was the point? Yeah. Probably. And, that's half the battle, is that you think, a lot of people think, another misconception, I guess, is that because people are actively working on themselves, they must feel better. Whereas actively working on yourself takes a lot more effort than just working on yourself.
And again, it's not, we're not talking a mass blanket of everybody. Everybody has their different way of coping things. And we start this episode to talk about self-sabotage and stuff. And it comes hand in hand with self-harm.
Yeah.
And straight away, apologies for any trigger warnings that this may lead, or anybody who's currently going through issues, and especially any of the parents out there who have children that do it. When you think of self-harm, you think causing injury to yourself, or cutting yourself, but it's not. It's working out to the point that it hurts, working out to the point that it affects your life, overeating to the point that it causes discomfort, overeating and self-indulging to the point where it becomes an issue, not eating because you're somehow gaining some control from it, and again, you don't eat until it hurts, being nasty to others to cause a reaction, that can all class as self-harm. There's more ways to self-harm than you could possibly imagine, and really the list is endless. I mean, there'll be people out there that'll be thinking of things right now. Oh wait, I didn't realize that was self-harm. Oh wait, but I've always done that. And it's anything that gives you almost a release. Yeah. I mean, it's I think as well, I recently spoke to somebody who had a child who was self-harming, and I understand this is difficult, and I understand that this is going to be the opinion of a lot of people, and for some, again, this may be true, but her first initial reaction was she's attention seeking. And I said, I'm not very sure about that. I said, majority of people that I know that self-harm in various ways, like everything that you were describing there, people are going to go, but hang on, Milque, Andrew didn't say he self-harmed. You did. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You did in a completely different way. Yeah. You didn't. Did you do that for attention, Andrew?
No, exactly. No.
You do it for almost a form of release.
Yeah.
I have found in my childhood, I started self-harming physically and actually cutting myself about 14, which was after my dad's death. And looking back on it now as an adult and being able to self-reflect back on it, I stopped in my early 30s. So, I had a big run of actual cutting. Yeah. I did it for a release. I did it because the emotions that were inside of me were too big, and I didn't know how to how to express them in a safe way. And I didn't know how to take that emotion that was building up inside of me and ask for help with it. So I struggle with anger. And whenever, very much like you were saying, this is really going to hit the nail on the head as well. If ever I am angry, I will text a friend and say, this has happened. Is it okay that I'm angry? And I won't allow my anger until somebody validates it and goes, oh, yes, no, Milky, you should be really angry about that. That I go, right, okay, I can be angry. But I've had to learn that as my coping mechanism of how I can deal with an emotion that I wasn't allowed to as a child to express quite freely. I also was hurting and missing my father and the disruptive of life. So I grew up, I had a child of my own, I met people, I had my own home and stuff like that. And I grew up, so why was I still self-harming? Again, I just didn't have a healthy way of dealing with all the emotion that was inside of me. I never once self-harmed for attention. I always self-harmed as a sense of release. I did my utmost to hide it. I did my utmost to do it in places that wouldn't be seen. And I was embarrassed by it, but I still didn't know how to deal with the emotions. I didn't know how to deal with that overwhelming urge. And that was the only way I saw of releasing the emotion. The better things got, the worse my self-harming got. It was almost like a clutch that I had to hold on to. Now, I gave up self-harming in my early 30s because I read a book called Cupcake Brown. And it's about a woman who had a horrendous life. I cried through most of the book. And it was recommended by a friend of mine. And I still don't think I've forgiven her yet for it. No, definitely not forgiven her yet, if I can remember who it was. But Cupcake Brown gave up drugs and most of the things that she was doing. And somehow that tiny little page of the book that explained how she would take heroin tomorrow. No matter what she got through, if she could just make it through this one day, she would do it tomorrow. And that's how I stopped my self-harming. I thought, right, if I can just make it through today, I'm going to get to self-harm tomorrow. And I would set a time. So I would be like, right, Tuesday, when my son's in bed at 10 o'clock, I'm going to self-harm. Then Tuesday would come and I'd be like, right, if I can just make it through today, I'm going to self-harm tomorrow. So again, I would set a time. I would set all my things up, right, Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And the great thing was tomorrow never came. And I'm going to say a good 10 years plus down the line of still waiting for tomorrow. And there's some days I still have to set it all up and I still have to think, okay, I'm going tomorrow. I've recently lost my mum and I've had to deal with that grief. And I found myself having to go back to some fail-safe mechanisms and some, what's the word? What's the proper word, Andrew?
Coping mechanisms.
Coping mechanisms, that's it. Coping mechanisms that I had buried, which I hadn't needed for a long time, but I've had to dust off and start using them again. It's just part of dealing with life. So, as I mentioned earlier, self-sabotage. And I have stopped self-harming physically by cutting myself, but I self-harm in many different ways. I self-harm with overeating. I can self-harm. I was for a while self-harming with going to exercise classes too much and going to the extreme where it wasn't actually doing my body any good. Yeah. I was going so much that my body was just like, are you kidding us? Hang on. We need to eat and rest in this. But I was like, no, come on, you can come do it. And I was going to Sparta, and one of the trainers there turned around to me and was like, are you wanting to get fit? Because like you're not going to get fit. You're just tiring yourself out. You're like contradict, like one exercise class after another. It's undoing. Yeah. So would I be truthful if I said I no longer self-harm? No, I'd be lying. I just do it in a different way. Yep. And I think it's difficult if it's a coping mechanism that you've had, and if it's a coping mechanism that you use quite regularly, it's very difficult to let go of it. Mm-hmm. And I think some people just can. And I feel like I'm one of them people that will always need to have that coping mechanism of escape route almost. Yep. when my emotions get too much, when things get too overwhelming, when I feel that I just can't put them into words, I'll always reach for that tub of ice cream. Yeah. I'll always finish that packet of biscuits. Yeah. Sorry, everybody. just try to create a little earthquake there. If I can find a solution to it at 46 years old, after what? Sorry, my math is absolutely horrendous, but like 30 years plus of using it as a coping mechanism. And, you know, it's enabled me to have jobs. It's enabled me to get on with everyday life. It's enabled me to have relationships. If I was to let go of it now, would it take me right back to the start? You know, it's that worrying of, in order to move forward, sometimes you have to go back a step and you're like, but I'm coping. I've got a life. I'm doing well. Exactly like what you said. You had a routine. You got up at the same time every time you do. And, you know, a bit of drinking at the weekend enabled you to get up on Monday, to go to bed, to go to the gym, to eat right, to be healthy and right, to be that. So if it's giving you the ability to live every day, why would you want to stop it? Yep. Now, this is not me giving you free will to carry on self-sabotaging and to keep hurting yourself. What I'm saying is I understand your reluctance to grow, to come away from it, to let go of that self-harming, self-sabotage that you do. But there is hope out there. And I can now go months and months without digging into a tub of Ben & Jerry's. Or any sponsors for Jackapazzi's would like to give me a tub of ice cream?
Bubblegum.
Kerry, Peter, not wanting to inflict self-harm and Jackapazzi's in the same word, because Jackapazzi's is far too delicious.
Oh, they are.
But if it gets you through every day, and if it gets you through a hard time, there might be times where you need to do it. But please do it safely. Yeah. And please, you know, have a think. Can I put this off until tomorrow? Can I keep myself safe, and can I maybe find some other way of doing? I mean, like, exactly. What was it that made you stop the drinking? Was it that you got so low, or was it that you got so deep, or was it that you saw the hurt you were causing around yourself?
For me, it goes back. Yeah, I for alcohol, I knew for alcohol specifically, I knew that my body was my mind. Sorry, not my body, my mind.
It is your body, though. I mean, mental health affects your.
Oh, it encapsulates everything.
It affects your body. It's almost like it's body and soul.
Oh yeah, it's a unison entity, at one with itself. What I always recognized then was my mental health had shifted towards alcohol. That my mind very much knew it was bad, and things were going bad fast, and things were going south very, very, very fast. And what I'd actually started doing with alcohol was just so stupid. I'll explain it I'll obviously explain it just now. Was I would go and I would go up to the garage and just say I picked up eight cans of Heineken. Now 8 cans is a modest amount, enough to get me drunk, not enough to get me hammered, so I'd miss work the next day or whatnot. But I would drink them as fast as I can so I could be sick, knowing that I could get that toxin back out my system, while still having it in me for a brief bit of time to get that escape from the depression that I was feeling at the time, because my mental health was going severely in regression, I should say. I knew it was happening. I was very aware of that it was happening. I knew from day to day that it almost felt like I was losing myself a little bit more. And I absolutely knew that alcohol is the last thing that I should be taking. It is. I mean, it's a depressant. You're taking antidepressants in the morning to make yourself feel better, Andrew, and then at night time you're going and having 8 cans of Heineken. That's twice as strong as them antidepressants. And yeah, for me, my body, I say it before, my body just turned around and it made the decision for me, and it stuck me in a hyperactive anxiety attack-like state for weeks. And I am now, and I'll say this to a lot of people, a lot of my issue now with alcohol is that I'm too scared to drink alcohol.
Yeah.
Because I know that
The end.
Well, yeah, my dark days can be really dark, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. When you do have the intrusive thoughts and you do have the negative self-talk, it's hard to control them from spiraling into darker thoughts. Now, the last thing I want to do, it would be coherently irresponsible if I recognize that is such a strong emotional sense in my head to then go and take alcohol.
But we still do.
But we still do. I'm lucky. I'm one person that I can see the damage that I've managed it. But my God,
to separate from
I can feel and I respect why people can't.
Yes.
Because it's such a fast release. Like there's nothing as fast as alcohol.
And I really want people to understand, and sorry, I'm speaking on behalf of Andrew here as well, but I want people to understand that we are aware of how lucky me and Andrew are.
That's it.
We are so lucky to have gotten to, oh gosh, I hate the saying, to the other side of things, or to take that massive leap and to think, okay, things need to change. We know that there are people out there who unfortunately aren't lucky enough to have reached that, and just like we were all the same, and I know that there is nothing different from me than from anybody who is suffering from substance abuse, other than I was lucky enough, or my body's chemistry or whatever was lucky enough to get me out of it. And also we had people in our lives who had a positive influence and who got us out of that. We're aware that not everybody has that. So please do not feel that we are saying that your battle is any less than ours in the slightest. When I had that first cigarette at 14, I did not think I would still be smoking X amount of years later. I've since given up, thank goodness, because I don't know how anybody affords it. But again, I was lucky enough that I was able to give it up. It took me numerous failed attempts, and I did it. When you have that first drink, when you had that first Heineken, let's go back to the very beginning. When you had that first Heineken, at no point did you see it becoming a problem. Oh. You were like, oh God, that tastes really good. I really like that. I'm going to have another one. At no point did you intend that first drink to become an issue. Just the same as if somebody tries drugs for the first time, they do not try drugs thinking, I want to be a junkie. Oh. I want to have a substance abuse for the rest of my life. None of these things that we start with intention. Mm-hmm. It's a first time. Yeah. And if there was a big, massive banner on an aeroplane that went past you saying that very first time that you took that first drink, you will be an alcoholic, would you listen?
It's societal peer pressure. Exactly.
You just don't.
No, that's
you think I'm going to be different to everybody else. I'm going to be able to do this one time and never do it again. Yeah. And it's luck and surroundings and people that enable us to get away from it. And I wish there was more. I wish there was a really easy answer of how you survive and how you step away and how you grow and how you change, but there's not.
Well, I'll tell you one thought. It's been a really fast hour as well. I'm just keeping times on the episode. Like,
I love how we always go into this and I'll be like, I've got nothing to say, Andrew. I'm not even sure where we're going to pluck things
I know,
out.
and then it's already been an hour just past like that. Like I say, it's so proactive, but not to end on a high note, not to end it straight away, but to tail off. Is that when, let's just say for somebody that's listening, that's maybe thinking, maybe they're like I was, maybe they're like, oh, I wish I could stop drinking. I wish I didn't feel that way. Okay, for starters, yes, that's going to be let's just be honest, that's going to be very difficult for you just to flick a switch and expect change.
Yeah. So if we sum that up, and anybody out there that wants to stop self-harming, whether it's through substance, whether it's through self-inflicting pain, if anybody's out there that just wants to stop self-harming, please, there is loads of charities and supports out there.
And find somebody to talk to, and find somebody that's going to listen to you as well, because that's a really important point that I've started voicing quite recently. Is that,
and if you're concerned, sorry, Andrew, I will let you finish the sentence. If you're concerned about a loved one or a friend that is currently going through something like this, my advice to you is be open-minded. Do not judge. You do not know the battle, the inner demon, the inner voice that person is fighting every day. So please, if they come to you, be open. Please don't judge them. Please don't judge them. And if anything, just listen.
Yes, that's the most important part is please listen, and then give advice. Because if you listen properly, you should be able to give some sort of sound advice. That could be honest advice. It might not be what the person directly wants to hear. Obviously, tread carefully with how you deliver that advice, whether it be in the right time or not.
And there is nothing wrong with admitting that you don't know what to say.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Losing my mum, I had a lot of people come up to me and you stand there and you don't know what to say. You cannot take away somebody's grief. You cannot take away somebody's depression. You cannot take away somebody's anxiety. And it's okay to admit that you don't know what to say. You don't know what to do. But let's find out together. Let's work on something and let's do this together.
That's it. So you're exactly right there. You can't cure the illness, but you can certainly take the burden of the illness away. But have a little, and this is just a little bit of open advice. Maybe it's something that I should listen to myself, but I'm going to use myself as an example here anyway.
Right, come on, Andrew, you can do this.
That when I was having the discussion with my mum the other night, and when you're having the discussion with somebody that's listening, they'll give you little pointers back, and you must listen to them pointers that come back to you. And I'm going to tell you the importance of that. Why? So going back to right at the start of the podcast episode, about saying, kind of validating with the podcasts and validating with the awareness that I've been doing, it doesn't feel like I've been getting the most out of myself. It feels like I'm failing at it. And very quickly, for a couple of sentences that my mum had said is, oh, but this episode was good. Oh, but that episode was good. Oh, but maybe when you've said that, maybe that's something that you need to do. And then all of a sudden, a little thought came into my head, and I realised that it will be in 11 weeks. It will be the Borderlines podcast first birthday party.
Woohoo!
I know. I just can't believe it's been a year already.
Well done, Andrew.
And only until Monday did I realise that if I carry on in the same vein, as in the distribution of the way I've been doing recordings and the amount of recordings that I'll do, is that come September, I've actually would have done a podcast episode for every single week of the year.
Well done.
Now, I never, ever thought of that before that. And that, for me now, is that life back into my stomach to hold on the now, Mr. Intrusive
Look what
Voice.
I did.
I've got a little bit of data and facts in front of me right now, because this is no longer me thinking of the validation feelings. This is me knowing there's actually data now. Now I don't care if anybody goes listens to it.
Okay, I'm going to forgive Andrew's mum for trying to tell you to listen to your own advice. Yeah. Oh, honestly, that's a pet peeve. I think that advice you give everybody else. I think you should listen to it too, Milky. No.
That's I am the worst for not listening to my own advice sometimes that I give people. But it's it's just
validation 100% from this end, Andrew. Well done. And you did that with a voice. You did that.
And that's what I mean.
Again, I'm not sure if many of you know that Andrew did Hydrox as well as all them podcasts. But you managed to do a year, 52 weeks worth of podcasts whilst battling all them thoughts. And that is the validation that... another little point that I'm going to make dead quick is I got told to print out my reviews and to put them near my laptop. Okay. So if I'm ever having doubt, I'm looking back at the good feedback that I had, that validation, and just read through it. So going back to what we said and what both me and Andrew said is that validation and having somebody listen to you and somebody acknowledge all the hard work that you've done can be, a kind word can be enough to change someone's day, to change someone's life, to change someone's trajectory, like it did Andrew. And he's living proof that you can do this.
Yes.
And he has done this. And he's going to carry on doing it, or he's going to be in trouble.
He definitely will. And I'm going to actually end this episode in quite a nice, unique, weird little fashion, actually. And this is I've never tried to do this before, and I'll actually be using a historical figure for a reference for a little bit of philosophical connotations. Okay,
love it.
And when some of that I just want to say as well, actually, thank you for this episode, because
You are so welcome.
I think we've succeeded the goals and we've made ourselves feel a little bit. But I've got a smile on my face, so that's good.
Bringing back a bit of hope.
That's it. It's bringing back a bit of hope. But to highlight a point that Milque made, where we should never judge, is that I'm going to give a little bit of historical reference to this, and I'm sure everybody knows who Abraham Lincoln is.
My school in Dominican Republic was called Abraham Lincoln.
No way!
Yeah.
No way! How weird is that?
I know, it was Abraham Lincoln School. Yeah.
So, the Battle of Gettysburg was in the Civil War back in. I'm not even going to try and attempt what year it was, but the Union battalion that Lincoln had sent out had full capabilities of ending the Civil War there and then by seizing. Now I can't remember the rebellion leader's name, but they could have killed him and they could have ended the war. But 3 or 4 days later, a telegram came through Abraham Lincoln, and it was a note from his head general of staff to say that they had abandoned the mission, that they had allowed the civilian army to pass across this bridge, that they never should have been. I mean, they were outnumbered. They were completely outnumbered. Abraham Lincoln lost it. He lost his shit. He'd thrown things around his office, furiously penning a letter back saying how disappointed he was in them, how he could have ended the Civil War, yada yada, that he'll be executed when he returns. And it never happened. In fact, when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, when they're searching out with his drawer, they actually found that letter unsent. And the reason they didn't send it is because very quickly after writing it and letting them emotions out, it was actually clear to him that Abraham Lincoln had done that within the confines of the White House. He hadn't been the man that was on the battlefield. He hadn't been the man that had listened to all his other soldiers die and suffer around him. He wasn't the man that had to go days without food, knowing that 3 more days of fighting, really, even though it was that close to the end, he hadn't put himself in the other people's shoes first. And that's why he didn't send that telegram, because there was no validation from his point whether he would be making the right decision or not. Because to condemn somebody without putting yourselves in their shoes first, is just, it's completely unfathomable to do that. So I don't know if that made sense. I think I was trying to make a point.
Do you know, it really, really did. It did. And, I think it's going to encourage people to maybe think.
Yeah, that's it. Just think a little bit.
Think about, you don't know the battle that person's going through. So think before you speak.
These guys could have ended a war there and then, but they didn't have the fight in them there and then. And that's what was crucial. So, think. Milque, this has been a brilliant episode. And
you're welcome. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I hope it's not been too warm in here. Do you like the summer setup rather than the winter setup?
You said good evening to everybody, and we're sat in the high afternoon sun, but no, it's evening.
That's the AI robot in the head now. That's just programmed in it. So it's good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. I think I'm going to get his slogan, the captions. But let's not wait too long. You'll be on the show again soon.
Definitely.
Because it's so healthy to have these conversations, isn't it?
Yeah. And I hope somebody out there's taken a bit of hope from what I've said.
Oh, massively well have. They definitely well have. So, Milque, honestly, leave some comments in the bottom of this episode as well if you'd like to see Milque back and any other topics that you'd like to see us conquer as well. But this has been a blast. And
again, anybody wants to speak about the goodness of running, I am ready to do a debate on how it's not.
I'm going to get a guy called Keith Patterson on for you.
Yes.
The guy is a super runner, and I'll sit outside quite happily for an hour, and you guys can just
I'll bring my knee braces just in case.
Excellent. Right, guys. From Milque Colin and from Andrew Willox, this has been the Borderline Podcast. Good night.